Hello and welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I'm your host, Gary Morgan. With me, as always, my good friend, Jim Stam. How you doing, brother?
Good, man. How the hell are you? We had a busy week last week. We had Chad Hermanson on. We got to see Skeens. But we got lots else to talk about, too. But wasn't that a good conversation we had with Chad?
Oh, yeah, man. It was a good time. I would recommend anybody go back and take a look at that one. That one has nothing to do with current day Pirates, really. We touched on Skeens at the end a little bit, but
right,
really that was just all baseball junkie. Like, I want to hear stuff that has to have come from people that did it type stuff. And I just love that part of our little job here that we've created for ourselves.
Yeah. And just like, I think we both are kind of fascinated about the mental side of this game and just how much that plays a part with these guys. So fair warning, anytime we get a chance to talk to guys that have made it and coaches and whatever, we're going to do it because I think that stuff's such a huge part of the game, Gary.
Right. So today, first, I think we have one of the probably best call your shots I've ever had. I think it's really, really going to get us going. So I want to give it plenty of oxygen at the end of the show there in the third segment to make sure we get to it. We're going to talk about Connor Joe. Maybe we already have our first baseman. And let's talk a little bit about some of the contributors that are starting to turn it around a little bit. And, why is it enough at different times for different guys? Why is it sometimes a guy like Rowdy should be DFA'd and everybody dumps on him, and somebody like Triolo, everyone's kind of like, oh, well, let's maybe send him down and,
Sure.
Why is it so different?
We can even throw Jack in that conversation because people certainly like to. So
right. So let's see. Ryan Lytle says, hey, Jim, getting ready to head to Wrigley. All right, Ryan, repping over there. Get us a win, my friend. Get us a win.
Perfect.
So
I've never been to Wrigley. I'd like to definitely get there. It just hasn't
super worth
worked
the
out.
Experience, man. It
yeah,
really is. It's real. It's if you're a baseball nerd, you got to go there. You got to go to Fenway. You got to go to LA. And I'll never go back to LA ever again because it was such a hassle. But one of the best for the baseball nerd in me. One of the best experiences of my life.
Well, they're museums. You know what I mean? Like they're living, breathing baseball museums.
Right. So let's start with something that I think got a little touchy for some people, and I understand why. But somebody whose clock did run out, Ransy Contras, got DFA'd last week, and I think I brought this up actually towards the end of the show when we were talking about Paul Skeens as far as how they could get the roster spot, and we didn't really have much time to digest it, but I just remember you looking at me like I had horns growing out of my head. So we talked a little bit afterwards.
I do that occasionally, Gary.
We talked a little bit afterwards, after we were done recording, and I think we both kind of like, maybe, but it's probably too early. And then they went ahead and did it. So, they cut bait, and I get it. I don't think he was doing what they wanted. In fact, it felt like they were trying to avoid him. And, now, you figure out that he's been officially traded to the Angels for cash.
For cash money.
That kind of tells you what the league was looking at, too, because, the Angels offering cash is enough to get it done. That's about what you were going to get, right?
Yep.
The sad thing is I really am pulling for the kid, but I don't trust that organization to help him either. Angels have been bad with pitching.
No, I mean, it tells you that, like, I think everybody would have had a heart attack if somehow the Rays got him, right? Like that would have been the one you'd have been like, oh my God. But the Angels are in a rough spot. They don't have a lot. Someone was going to take him, Gary. I mean, that we knew that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I look at his numbers this year after getting put in the bullpen. Okay, it was an option we talked about as far as out of spring. We knew he had not made the rotation, and you and I questioned at the time, what do you do here? Do you shove him in
Mhm.
the bullpen and just see what you can do, or do you send him down? We both thought probably a good idea to bring him into the bullpen. Let's see what he does. They gave him 12 games this year, 4.41 ERA. Not honestly, not the end of the world for what they were asking him to do, right?
Mhm.
0.1 innings. He was giving up a 292 average though, and again, the control numbers aren't there.
Yeah, ton of base runners. Yeah, I mean,
So I can understand them being done with it, especially since they feel like they have better options. But right now, I'm not 100% sure they have a whole lot of guys who are doing a whole heck of a lot better. So I guess it still caught me a little bit by surprise. But what did you think of it? I mean, just on cutting bait with him to begin with. We can get into the emotions of it as we head into segment two if you want. But
yeah, just the nuts and bolts of it. Well, I, you know, I said this the other day. I was like, is there really any situation that you could trust bringing Rowanzi into other than just some maybe long relief mop up type duty? And when you start saying those things and asking those questions, am I surprised that they did it? Maybe a little, but I also think they were looking at the totality of things and knowing that they were going to need some legitimate, give some other guys some legitimate shots at coming in and providing meaningful bullpen innings, and they need that, Gary. Like
yeah,
the bullpen is what it is right now, which is at least for me completely opposite of what I thought it would be going into the season. So sucks, man. What, 3 years ago? What were we were talking about Ronzi as,
he was a
but
locked on piece. Yeah.
yeah,
Even going into last year, beginning of the season, we looked at him as I think a lot of us looked at him as like above Mitch Keller on the pecking order of who we were going to go ahead and trust.
yeah. Can
So
you imagine giving people the choice 3 years ago? Keep Keller, keep Contras.
I did give people the choice, and I do know what they chose. I mean,
Yep.
that was something that I wrote about. Like if you only got to extend one, which one would you extend? And I think almost everybody wanted Rawanzi, right?
Hmm.
Mitch has obviously proved that he has a role here, and they've done well there. But Rawanzi just it went south quick.
With
It
that,
was almost like Liriano when he finally fell off the cliff, and it was when everyone realized, hey, only one of his pitches is ever going to hit the strike zone, and when it does, it's eminently hittable. So I'm just not going to swing until he throws that.
it's it's kind of funny how many guys are so heavily reliant on a certain type of pitch, and yet they still don't figure that out. Crick comes to mind too, right? Kyle Crick, same
Yeah,
type of situation. But I'm okay with it. I think it was time. If he figures it out there or somewhere else, then so be it.
yeah,
But I don't think, Gary, that the Pirates have a tendency to talk out of both sides of their mouth a lot when it comes to competing and whatever. I think if you were a team that is looking for help right now and serious about shipping guys off that aren't producing or that they don't feel is going to help in the long term, he was one of them.
I would have to agree. And I'd also say one last thing before we take a break, at least. I think they gave it the old college try here. They had him with three different specialists, one of which was on the West Coast. He worked this off season independently with somebody as well, and then worked with them again. They felt like they had attacked everything they could mechanically. Nobody could put two and two together as to what happened to certain aspects of his velocity, but he just lost it. So,
Yeah.
hey, more power to him if he figures it out. Maybe he'll really embrace the bullpen at his next stop. Once you start journeying, I think sometimes the message sinks in a little bit more that
Yeah.
you're not going to get back to starting. So embrace this and do what you got to do.
And then there's the confidence thing, right? We've heard Cruz mention confidence. Reynolds has mentioned confidence. No one's immune to that, and it seems like Ransy maybe lost a little bit of that too.
Hey, let's take a break and come back and hit up something really positive. Connor Joe.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Ransy Contras, a little bit of a depressing talk, but we do wish him well. Let's move on to Connor Joe, who has been doing really well. And Jim, I think a lot of us have been avoiding saying something that might be staring us right in the face. And it really hit me when I was looking at next year's projected free agent board and looking at some people that might be available for trade for some place from some places to potentially fill the first base role here in Pittsburgh. I believe they have to take it seriously next year. Thought they should have this year too, but this year, admittedly, the market sucked. It really did. And the funny thing is, if you really want Reese that bad, you can quit crying because he's going to opt out and make himself available again next year. Bet that. So I think the options are pretty scary. Goldschmidt has completely fallen off the face of the earth. He's probably going to be the top candidate out there, right? Smith, I think it's Smith from Arizona is going to be available. And that's going to be a really big bet. Mountcastle might be available because the O's need room for some of these kids to come up. So they might have to think about moving off somebody like him who's got a couple years of control. But you miss on any of them, and Alonso, of course.
Yeah.
That's a Boris client. Ain't happening.
Right.
If it does, it's a 1-year solution anyway, right?
Yep.
Is Connor Joe maybe the first baseman until they develop somebody or move somebody over there? His bat is saying he has to be in the lineup. Why not there? Why not just quit pretending we don't have a first baseman? Maybe we do.
It's really hard to ignore. I don't know how. Look, he's getting at bats, right? But we talk about it how some guys, you need to be in there every day. I think it helps guys. I think anytime he's out of the lineup, you're essentially taking a bat that they have to have doing something, and he's sitting on the bench waiting for a pinch hit. I just can't get past that right now. I think by sheer default, they have to at least find out. Just let him play. Let him play. Hand him a first baseman's glove. And by the way, let's talk about him at first base. He hasn't embarrassed himself over there at all. At all.
So. No, I think he's handled it really well.
Yeah.
But works a little bit weird. I don't think he's ever going to be the best scoop over there. That's not. I don't think that's in his tool set. Stretching much better.
He's not
much better.
He's not a natural guy over there, but he's athletic enough. He's figured it out. I look. You're talking about it. It's interesting because I went back, Gary, and I even looked at like Shelton's comments at the beginning of the year, and they really did just see him as a platoon guy, as a pinch hit guy, as a matchups guy. And that's after he tied for the team lead last year with 31 doubles. So it's funny how even teams get it in their mind that guys are just one thing.
It's really funny too because we talk about what he did last year, and we continually bring up that you're worried about it falling off the table or overexposure with Connor Joe because he's been a part-time player. So when you try to make them a full-time player, sometimes they get exposed. And I think we witnessed a little bit of that last year. When he gets up around 350 at bats, he tends to start struggling a little bit. Well, we're not there yet. We could get there, but right now, he's second on the team in home runs, like right behind O'Neal Cruz. He's second on the team in doubles, right behind Brian Reynolds. And he is all the way number 6 on the team for number of games that he's actually appeared in.
And first in RBI? I think he's
Yes,
first.
he is first in RBI, leading the pack by 3 with 22. So, I mean, he's indispensable. Like, he should really be starting every game, right? And OPS, he's killing. He's almost he has lapped the field. He's a good 100 points ahead of O'Neal Cruz at 867.
Yeah.
O'Neal Cruz is at 763.
Right.
How do you not play the guy right now? So I guess like our never-ending search for a first baseman. I guess what I'm saying is here's a guy that he's under team control for, I think, till 2028.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Through arbitration. So maybe they kind of have their first base security blanket. And you can think about moving a kid over there to kind of learn under him a little bit. And eventually, hopefully, take those at-bats away from him. But maybe we don't have to go on an all-out search for a first baseman if it's not there. I would rather not force the issue with some of what I see out there.
Well, you certainly don't want to get yourself in yet another Rowdy Tellez, Yoshi Tsutsugo situation in the off season, right? You don't want to go. You don't want to go do that, and then all of a sudden, now you're in the next season, and it's May, and he's not, and whoever that is isn't hitting, and whatever. I think you just, if for no other reason right now, say he's by far our best option unless a trade is worked out, and you just give him the glove and let him play. And I think he deserves it. I think he deserves it too.
I would agree with that. We should probably move right into the Rowdy Tellez conversation because obviously I think it's just about been proven out at this point. Got over 100 at bats now. There's not much left to be seen, right? It doesn't look like he's really doing anything that's making an adjustment that means anything. He's still swinging over top of everything down. That hasn't stopped. He's not like suddenly taking that and taking his walks, right? Not that you want a guy like that walking. He'll even say that himself. You don't want a guy like that walking and singling.
Yeah.
But something's got to happen. You can't just keep doing the same exact thing. They keep pumping him in the middle of the lineup. At least that looks like it's stopped. They've settled on O'Neal Cruz kind of anchoring that position, and just thankfully something they should do. Why does Rowdy keep getting chances? They even said they needed to get him going just last week. I have to think patience is running thin.
I think this was the last ditch effort where they were just going to start. We're going to run him out there almost every day and hope and pray that something clicks and happens. And this was the last ditch effort. I think we are sitting in mid-May. I can't imagine it going on much longer than a couple more weeks like this. I can't, Gary. Can you?
No, I really can't. I mean, couple reasons for that. One, at his salary, he won't get claimed. So he can choose not to accept the assignment, and who cares about that? Somebody else will sign him for league minimum and give him a shot, whatever. Sign him to a minor league deal. You're still paying him. But nobody's going to claim him. And if he's as screwed up as I think he knows he is, maybe he accepts the assignment and just almost flips spaces with somebody like Lamb. My problem with Lamb is Lamb's got even a longer track record of not being good in the majors. And he's 30 plus years old, beating the hell out of a bunch of 23-year-olds, in AAA. And fine, bring him up, but man, don't waste another 2 months on that project either.
No, if that's the scenario, then Yeah. And by the way, it really wouldn't shock me if Rowdy goes down there and hits for the same reason that Jake Lamb could go and hit. It wouldn't shock me, Gary. Like, and that's why maybe Rowdy would consider it. I think he thinks he could go down there and work his way back up, which gives Pirate fans future nightmares to schedule. But
I mean, the reason he got so much opportunity early on, though, was because this team bought something they thought was going to produce some power. I don't think that they thought they were going to get 35 home runs out of him, but I think they thought they could get 15 to 20 out of him, right? I think they had to think that's something they could get.
I bet you they were right in that range of thinking, we're not going to ask him for 35 again, but 15, 18, 21 home runs, I think they thought they'd get that.
Right. It's clear, he's not on that kind of pace, and he's really not making any kind of contribution whatsoever offensively. No matter where they put him, he's a break. Even if he gets on base, it kind of takes a Herculean effort to get him around the bases. So yeah. I'm not 100% sure it helps, no matter where you put him. Feels like they're gonna cut bait. I don't think he has it in him to get hot enough to change their mind before June.
I don't think so either. I have stranger things happen. Yeah. I just don't think there's any track record there to think that this guy's just going to go on some 3-week heater and dominate. He was always a volume guy, right? Like like even when he did produce in, what was it, 2022. I know, like, even Rob here talks about, letting Grandal play some first base. Well, yeah, I mean, he could. But then, Joey Bart isn't exactly setting the world on fire either. How much are you willing to play him? So Triola, I think, is another guy. We're going to get to talk about him. They're just really limited at that position. And I think we're reaching the point where Rowdy's not going to be a Pittsburgh Pirate very soon.
Right.
I really do think so.
I think that's where I'm at too. And
but Gary, I do understand why they didn't have a ton of options once they signed him. I do understand letting it play out and just seeing if it turned around. I do understand that.
I think the reason that I understand it is because it isn't like they had another source to get those expected home runs, right? It's the same reason that you have to keep playing Jack, because Jack has hit 25 home runs in this league just last year. It's not like it's some distant memory. And they made a tweak with him. They're probably, and I think we're already seeing him actively trying to tweak it back. And he's starting to put some better swings on balls and pull them again and get them in the air. More line drives out of him recently. So if he can marry that with striking out slightly less and kind of balance it out and get back to being the power hitter he was, that's ideal. But you've got control of that kid for 4 more years. That's a power hitter you can't afford to live without. They can't win if Jack Sawinski isn't here hitting home runs. They do not have the offense without it. So to me, that's why there's a difference between giving up on Rowdy and giving up on Jack.
Yeah, right. And that's where we're obviously heading here, right, with this conversation is Jack is the type of guy, I mean, if just nothing else for age and limited experience, you give him as long as you possibly can. Now, has it entered my mind a little bit lately with Jack that if he doesn't get it straightened out, maybe like a quick little detour might be in order at some point? I might entertain that at some point, Gary. I'm not saying I'd do it right now, but I could see that. I think Jack could maybe use it.
Yeah, I think Jack could use consistently being sent to the plate against righties and lefties every day.
I do think that, yeah.
For over a week see if he can kind of catch on. He needs that. That's the type of hitter he is. He's an everyday guy that has to get his bat going. And he's not going to come back up here like from learning that every day in AAA, come back up here and go right back to being a platoon guy all of a sudden and hold on to it. You either do it with them or you don't do it with them. One or the other. And we watched them do this dance with Pedro Alvarez for the very beginning of his career, where they were afraid to let him face lefties. Remember, forever.
Sure.
Oh, it drove you nuts because the power was there. And yeah, he was struggling against lefties, but how was he ever going to learn to hit them if you didn't let him do it, right? So even this year that he starts showing some promise against lefties, they're still not letting him do it. And it's not like he's being outperformed by the righty counterpart they put out there. You know, I think we need the power bad enough that it's worth fighting through it a little bit.
I think overall you're right. If I think we are here in another month and it's still this, you know, that's really where I'm thinking maybe something like that might be not be a bad idea. I look at Jack and I think Jack looks very, I've said this before, almost neutered at the plate. And that's the worst thing to look like as a hitter. But
it's
he
close.
does.
Yeah, it's close.
Yeah, he does sometimes. And I just, I know people are fed up with him. I know they are.
Now, Triolo, I think probably would have gone for Gonzalez straight up the other day, or Alika straight up, had Hayes not gotten hurt, you know. So Triolo ends up staying here because he has to play third base. Thought it was interesting in the end of the Milwaukee game the other day when they were getting blown out. They left Triolo in the game, but they swapped he and Gonzalez. They moved Gonzalez over to third and put Triolo at second base. Now, I don't even think he got to field a ball, so if they were trying to experiment with it to see how it went,
right?
I don't think they learned anything. But I think it'll be really interesting if we see Gonzalez start at third base here one of these next few games. It should tell you they're probably getting close to sending Jared down, regardless of the third base defense. And I would imagine probably looking to bring up a Peguero or Bay.
Yeah, I think Bay is the one in my mind that you might see. The frustrating thing to me, Gary, about Triolo is this: all he had to do, or all he has to do, is hit a little bit, just a little bit, right? You pair him with his defense and his versatility. If he hits a little bit, and he just has not hit at all,
No,
you know, like. There's no underlying numbers that suggest he's been really, really bad. And running
it's all arms. They sent him like up there and told him to stand up straighter, thinking it would get more power. And I understood the concept. I get that. But he doesn't stride into it at all. It's a very, very arm heavy swing. That's what somebody's going to have to work with him on. And I think standing up straighter, it doesn't come instinctually to him to stride the way he should. I think he needed to be in that little bit of a crouch that he was accustomed to. Because at least while he was BABIP aided, he was making contact with the baseball. He was putting it into the outfield.
Yeah, putting it in play.
And getting things done. And he was rather clutch doing it because they were playing no doubles and he's out there popping little bloops around. It was almost Kevin Newman in spring training like.
It was.
You know, but that's preferable to what he's doing now. And that was the little bit of hitting I think we needed to see, right? So they're trying to get him to play into his frame a little bit, and I understand that, but that might have to happen at AAA.
I think if there's anybody who desperately just needs to take a breather and quit being put out there every day, when, I mean, Gary, he's in the 190s now. I know averages and everything, but he could use a nice little stint to try to get things sorted out.
Right. I mean, that said too, like you give a kid the job, like out of spring, like you make the production to saying, hey, you won second base. They didn't have to do that.
Right.
They didn't have to say somebody won second base. They didn't. They said, you won second base. You're the second baseman, fella. Well, that comes with a set of car keys.
Yeah, you have to give them some type of leash to succeed or fail.
Yeah, and that's what it is. And now I think it's time for Gonzalez to get that same opportunity. It's time for Gonzalez to get those car keys. Succeed or fail. Let him do it.
Yeah, and because even with Gonzalez, okay, we all know his issues, but at least there's an opportunity for some power and some extra base hits and things of that nature. And he's not a great defender, but he doesn't embarrass himself at second base. So
I think he's a really, really good defender.
Yeah, that's what
I
I'm
actually
saying.
don't even know why people downplay it or hedge it as often as they do with him.
Only because I look at it like I'm comparing him a little bit to Triolo is kind of what I'm doing there.
Sure.
More than anything.
Sure. I mean, compared to Hayes, he's a terrible third baseman. But if Hayes is going to have the back issues though recur every year, as Haley's Comet at this point, it's here. We're going to deal with this every year. It's going to make a player like Jared Triolo or Jack Brannigan at some point. It's going to make a player like that vital to have on your roster, because you're not going to be able to know that every year at some point you're going to be without your Gold Glove third baseman for 2-3 weeks here and there, and not have somebody ready to replace him. And so I guess it's always good to have that around as a utility.
Sure. And I think, like, speaking of Hayes and the back situation, I think what's always interesting is like Hayes wasn't off to a very good start. He wasn't driving the ball, turning on it like he was last year. And so the question always comes up is, like, once he does have the back problem, which is coming at some point, was he already dealing with it? Or was that a separate thing, right? Like, and you never.
It's pretty clear he was.
On some level, you'd have to assume that he was.
Well, they already sat him 3 weeks ago because it flared up a little bit. He sat down for 2 games. You knew right then they were starting to nurse it. And then you knew it was building up to the eventual, hey, it's too bad. And that's where they are. And when he comes back, he'll hit like a ball of fire, because everything will be working and all of his muscles will be turning, and he'll be able to get and turn that ball, get out in front of it and pull it again. He'll do great for 3-4 weeks, a month. And then all of a sudden, I'm back. I think it's just going to be a problem that they're going to have to almost insulate themselves from.
And I think they thought they had too, right? I think they, and I did too. I thought Triolo was kind of like the perfect guy to have. And so it's frustrating in that regard that it hasn't worked out.
I would totally agree with that. I think let's cover another player before we take a break here. Eric Lauer had his opt-out granted, and they let him walk. All that really is an admission that it would take an act of God to get to him on a depth chart, if you ask me.
He hadn't looked great. Yeah, even.
No, I mean, I saw some people say, "Oh, he only had a couple bad outings, and they probably should have given him another shot." I'm not sure why. I mean, I don't really know what you're really gaining by forcing somebody up here that hadn't really made it,
Yeah, and it'd be one thing it'd be one thing, I think, too, if like he was maybe a little younger. He's not a spring chicken. I think like you could maybe, but he was given he's the one that opts out, right? He was the one that decided. Yes,
he's opts out, but they have to, I guess, grant the release or something. It's a technical way of putting it.
Right.
The other move that kind of surprised me a little bit, Jim, if only because, man, it felt to me like they've given guys a lot longer leash than this, and especially guys that started out really good. Josh Fleming. Now, granted, man, the last few outings have been awful. But there was a point there where he was like the only thing going. Like when David Bednar was screwing up and Chapman was, still was kind of not great. But he was kind of holding it down there for a while. Like, and then they had him open a game, I think, for Quinn Priester or Bailey Falter the one day. And then after that, he kind of maintained for a minute. And then these last 3 or 4, they're just like, that's it. See you later. I was shocked by that, actually.
That's like the crappy side of this business too, right? Like ride someone really hard, and then the minute he shows any cracks in that, and he started to, that was it. I guess they feel those dudes are just completely replaceable. Their situation with their lefties, I don't know that that's the case. So
you figure they got Hernandez left. And then what?
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. So, yeah, it caught me off guard, I thought. And, I wonder how that stuff goes over in the clubhouse. I really do.
I don't know. And there could be something we don't know, too. Like, I don't know. It could be anything stupid. Like something that they felt like was changed in his delivery, and they've been trying for like 4 games to get it right, and he doesn't have any options either. So sayonara, man.
Yeah. I think there were bigger fish to fry, but it's funny because on the pitching side, Gary, they seem to be doing a little bit more of, well, it's time, right? Like there's no more time we can give people, but offensively, that's another story. And I think that that's kind of like a big tell in the sense of we feel we might have other options pitching. We don't think we have a lot of options offensively other than to wait and beg and hope and pray somebody turns it around. So I think that that's the difference.
And I think the other thing this year too that a lot of people really don't want to admit is there's not really a good way to go about this season without having to deal with a few growing pains from some guys. Like Cruz was going to come into this season rusty. There was really no avoiding that. And probably not trusting his surgery all that much. I know I haven't whenever I've had them. It takes a while to have that thing happen. Like sometimes when you play hockey, like you got to have the puck hit you. You got to just know I'm all right. All right, that's okay. It hit me right in the ankle. I lived.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on. Baseball's the same way. Like you twist your ankle, break your ankle. You're going to trust it until you kind of twist it one day and you realize it didn't fall off.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's scar. There's scar tissue, and then there's mental scar tissue with that stuff.
Yeah, right.
I remember one time Jerome Bettis went down in a heap after he had a knee surgery, and it looked like he blew his knee out again. You know what it was? It was tearing up of all that old scar tissue. He was totally fine.
Yeah.
But yes, I do think with Cruz, in hindsight, O'Neal Cruz is probably somebody that out of all these guys was going to take the longest.
Yeah. And he does look like he's gotten it now. Reynolds, I feel, was probably the most expected performer out of all of them. You kind of know what he's going to do. He's locked in. He's given it to you really the last few years. I kind of was talking a lot about this last week. But I think early in the season, we have people that love to quote stats and act like it's just unacceptable. Like, how can this guy be getting $70-some million and he's hitting 233? That ain't right. He got the money and now he's just sitting there getting splinters in his ass. No, really what happens is like a guy like him comes out and hasn't hit left-handed and finally just goes ham and goes 5 for 5 in one game. And all of his averages and everything jump up by double digits. To now all of a sudden, all that crap is acceptable again. That's early season baseball. You can't be like quoting me the ERA of some bullpen guy. David Bednar could pitch clean the rest of the year, and he won't get his ERA under 3 because of how crappy he started.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter to me what his ERA is.
I think it's a psychological thing, right? Like you want to look down on paper and see certain things. And when you don't, it no matter when that is, it's going to evoke a reaction.
Yeah.
So it's like putting a guarantee on a box, right? Not to go the Tommy Boy route, but like you want that guarantee on the box. You want it to make you feel better. But at the end of the day, what does it really matter? And I think that's what we look for in stats sometimes. I know Brian Reynolds in that 5-for-5 game, if memory serves, his OPS jumped from 710 to like 769.
711 to 778.
Okay, something like that.
WRC plus from 104 to 121.
Okay. Yeah, like crazy stuff.
That's what I'm talking about, though. Like early in the season, though, that's what happens. Like Connor Joe can go 0 for 6 over his next 2 contests. And all of a sudden, somebody is going to jump on Twitter and go, Connor Joe in his last 7 games. And you're going to go, oh my God, what? He's awful. You thought he'd be a starter. Huh, you idiot. But look at the overall picture. Look at what's actually happening. What have you done for me lately is real.
That's so. Do you see what Josh is putting?
Let's see. Reynolds had a ghost in his hotel room. Yes, he did, in the Pfister Hotel up in Milwaukee.
The ghost.
Rowdy just let that slip today on a podcast he was on.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
A lot of people see them at the Pfister, though, man. That's like a whole thing there. So
the ghost of Tony Gwynn appeared as a ghostly hitting instructor.
It's beautiful. Hey, let's take a quick break again and come back, and then let's do Call Your Shot, because I think it's awesome today, and it'll really get us talking.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
Welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Rob R. in the chat comes through with the awesome ghost that Brian Reynolds saw. It's the ghost of Randall Simon hitting the sausage. And let's hope that he did not connect with Mr. Reynolds, because that would be fun.
No, all I'm going to say there is, Rob, phrasing, buddy. let's talk about phrasing.
There may have needed to be a comma or so in there, right?
Thank God he didn't mention the name of the hotel in there either.
I love it, man. Hey, let's do Call Your Shot. As always, brought to you by our good friends over at shopyins.com. You can go there, and if you feel so inclined, you can buy show merchandise from our show. You can buy show merchandise from Bucks in the Basement there too. Actually, a good friend of ours, Craig Toth over at Bucks in the Basement, sells some stuff over there as well. They have a bunch of original designs. It's all 412, all black and gold, all under one logo. The Yins logo, shopyins.com. And here we go. All right. This is a great one, man, for real. The Pirates' aggressive promoting of Jones and Skeens seems incongruent. That means it doesn't make sense to some of you folks that don't want to get out your thesaurus with the passivity towards their hitting woes. They didn't wait until mid-April on Jones to gain a year of control and promoted Skeens a month before the estimated Super 2 cutoff. Yeah, that's close to a month. You're probably right. Most fans, himself included, applauded this as putting winning over cost control. The lack of effort to bolster the offense preseason or in season seems out of sync with the more aggressive handling of 2 prized pitching prospects. How do you make sense of this? That's from my friend Jim Maruka. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I talked to him enough that I should have probably asked. And this was actually for my Q&A that I did over at Steel City Pirates. You can go read the full answer I had on there. But listen to us here because I've had a whole day to think about it now. So I might even say different stuff.
And I have 10 seconds, so that's a perfect combination.
I mean, for real though, we've talked about this a little bit. The pitching got here faster than I think you and I thought it would. In fact, preseason, we had the exact opposite conversation. The bats were here and the pitching wasn't, and we were very worried.
The bats were here, the bullpen was good, and the pitching was a huge concern.
Not only that, we were just worried they had enough pitching in general. Not like that they would be in a blessed position to be sending Quinn Priester, who is showing every sign of a rookie starting to get it, back to AAA because you have to.
Yeah.
So we've come a long way, and it's not what we expected, right? I kind of should give some of you hope that the offense kind of does the same thing next year, right? Because it hasn't looked so great in the minors so far. But I think part of this question to me is I don't know that they could have possibly expected Jones would do what he's done and force them to just start making plans to keep him up here. Because I don't think they thought he would provide that kind of performance. It's not even in his history. If you look at what he's done, he's been a guy that struggles with control and winds up throwing enough pitches to get himself out of a game somewhere in the 5th or 6th most of the time. So, but here's what he's done. Leads MLB starters in whiff percentage and strike percentage, leads the NL in lowest walks per 9, second. Major League fewest pitches per inning. This is all from Joe Block. He loves doing this stuff. He's not allowed a stolen base on this team. That is he should probably get a special award for that.
Exactly.
I mean, lowest slug with runners in scoring position in the NL. 4th in NL whip. I mean, this guy's been incredible. They can't send him back now. They can't have expected it. They can't have expected Skeens would get here with no speed bumps. Nothing.
Yeah, I think that's the thing is like unexpected things happened on that side of it with these two guys. I don't think they envisioned it like this at all. It's kind of just, for lack of a better term, just fallen in their lap that Jones has turned into what he has, and they gave him that spot out of spring training. There was no putting that toothpaste back in the tube, right?
No.
Okay.
To his credit. And theirs.
Yes, and it's great to be surprised by something like that. Obviously, like we've been begging for something like that to happen, where you just get super, super lucky with somebody and he turns into something that you didn't think he was going to be.
Right.
And so that happened. And then Skeens, again, to his credit and his talent level, just showed time after time after time you could not keep him in the minors. Like at some point it was just past the point of absurdity. So now
he's got lessons to learn that he wasn't going to learn there. Like when he faces Christopher Morel can turn around 102 and loves to do it and looks for it and wants to do it and wants to be that guy. Like that's a guy he's going to learn. Yeah, I better use my secondary stuff again. I think even his first outing against the Cubs, we got to see that. And we're going to instantaneously get to see how quickly Paul Skeens learns from a situation, because he's going to face almost the same lineup. And the lessons that he learned like just a week ago, he now gets to go ahead and apply a week later in his very next outing. I want to see what that does to a kid that I know thinks the game the way he does.
Yeah, Bellinger was another one that you talk about with like, you can throw Cody Bellinger 101, 102. Cody Bellinger's not gonna. He can hit that. You know what I mean? So he's gonna
Right.
have to figure out that certain guys, you cannot just blow them away, like
Right.
at any point in time that you want to. You got to be a little careful at times. He'll learn that. So this is interesting, right? Because this is a whole nother topic I think we could get into is like, what do you do now when these two are up and they're ready to go?
And you've got Keller too. So
And you've got Keller too.
You've got 3/5 of a rotation, and I think they've got other guys that are worth depending on right now. Like Bailey Falter, I think has proven that he's at least good enough to be a number 5. Martin Perez is a number 5. Earmuffs for what happened yesterday, but we all said that was in his bullseye of what's going to happen, right? So the rotation is going to go into next year knowing, given health, that it has better answers. They're going to head into that. They should spend money on offense. That's where it should come next year, right? This year, though, if these pitchers are going and you get Reynolds and Cruz and Hayes and Connor Joe and, God willing, Jack Sawinski going, that's probably enough to get to that 82, 84 game level that they want, that they keep quoting so that they can be like the Diamondbacks. Because whether we like it or not, that was the competitive they've been talking about.
Yeah, we get back to that whole conversation, right? Definitions.
Yep. And it may not be enough for everybody. It's not my definition, but I know it's theirs. And you do too. You were at Pirates Fest. How many times did they reference the Arizona Diamondbacks right after they talked about being competitive, right after they talked about getting into the wild card, right? They would always go, look at the Arizona Diamondbacks last year. Why, look what they did. It was so easy. They got all the way to the World Series. Well, okay. Yeah, that's true. They also had a phenom lighting it up every day at the plate, and we don't have that right now. That needs to be somebody like a Henry Davis. You need him to come back up. He needs to be one of your big acquisitions here.
Yeah, and here's something that I will remind Pirates fans of. Because if you don't think that some of their thought process is what I'm about to say is, Gary, I looked last night. The Pittsburgh Pirates are 2 games out of a wild card spot. Yes, I know it's just 25% of the season, but they are still going to say in their mind that there is something that they can do with that. They will. That may make fans' ears bleed, but that's the truth. That's the way it works now in Major League Baseball for a lot of these teams that are middling. Just stick around. They're a couple games out of a wild card spot, and you hope that you can turn it around.
I mean, I have to be real, though. I'm not 100% sure they had a whole lot of opportunity to not go this route. I think first base is a place where they really could have. I really do. I think first base is a place you didn't have a guy coming. There was a spot completely open, whatever. Second base, they had 4 legitimate options fighting for that spot.
Yeah.
I don't know how you go into a season in the position they're in and not try what you have. That's kind of the point of having them. So I think that position had to be left to a kid. And that was always going to be struggle. That was always going to be Jared Triolo is either good enough and the defense is good enough, or Gonzalez just kills it, comes up and takes it, or Peguero does, right?
Sure.
So that was always going to play out.
I guess
the outfield, you're always going to try Jack. He just hit 25 home runs last year. I'm sorry. That's going to happen. They went and got a veteran center fielder. Cool. I guess Harrison Bader would have been an upgrade to that.
So the interesting thing to all this is I guess the rest of the way is that you do have Jones and Skeens and Keller. Do you wait till the off season to start doing some of this where you've got the holes, or do you start poking around real soon.
I think I'd do some of it at the deadline. I mean, if nothing else, it looks to me like, again, you have to wish and hope for health. Okay, it's not like, let's just not repeat that for every conversation, but assuming health, you have to hope that Martin Perez or Bailey Falter, probably Perez more likely, has made themselves available, and Quinn Priester has pushed his way up here to the point where you're like, whoa, okay, Quinn, we'll let you go, come on up and start. Maybe then you move somebody like Martin Perez, who you've already moved to the bullpen at that point. That's what you hope happens when you sign these guys. You hope Rowdy Tellez starts hitting home runs like crazy here, and you're like, all right, Rowdy, cool. And then at the deadline, you're like, bye, Rowdy.
Sure. Well, that was the
That's
hope.
what you hope.
Right.
Because you're not trading Andrew McCutchen. He's not in that class. He's staying. You don't have a lot of movable parts like that. Ryan Barucki's another one you might have been able to move, but on the shelf with him. Marco Gonzalez is a guy you might have been able to move. I don't know. I don't know who you really move from that class. Grandal is a guy that if his legs stay on, you might be able to move for something. But
yeah. And do you start looking at some of these holes that they have on the major league roster and start exploring options there and trading from some of your surplus, which is right now pitching, right? When do you start doing that? Would be my biggest question.
For what?
Well, hopefully they would look at somebody like, ideally what I would do is I would hope you would go out and try to get somebody that helps offensively, maybe at first base, maybe at second base, or an outfielder if they're available.
You think second base?
I would explore it.
See, I wouldn't. I've still got two more guys I want to try out if Gonzalez doesn't work out. And I'm not even rolling out, circling back to Triolo. Like after he kind of goes down a little, to me, like second base isn't something I want to clog up. I just feel like I've got better options.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't clog it up. I'm saying though, if something presents itself that is an upgrade, I go back to the whole Jones, Skeens, Keller thing, and I want to start moving some of that other stuff forward.
If I'm trading some
quickly.
Good young pitching though, I'm not trading it for something I kind of don't want to block those other guys. If I'm doing something like that, I'm going like, hey, San Diego, give me Ha-Sung Kim. I love him at second base. He's my second baseman of the future. All the other guys, hope you find another place to play. Peggy, can you play outfield? Let's try it. Like whatever. Because if you're going to answer it, answer it. If you're going to trade young pitching, you better get something back that's not an experiment. It's got to start.
Sure. No, absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Because at first base, I don't see that. First base is the big trouble spot for me. I'm not trading any of my young pitching to St. Louis. I want them screwed, and I'm not helping them.
No,
I'm
I
just
wouldn't
not
go to St. Louis for anything.
Well, and you'd want Goldie,
and I have family there,
and he stinks. You know what I mean? So like,
right?
I don't want that. I don't want to make a deal with them. Do you find a first baseman elsewhere? You can. I mean, but like I'm looking around, I don't see a lot of it. I don't see a lot that I want. And sure. I don't know that I would trade any of the good young pitching for what's available. And the teams that have it, I don't think they're getting rid of it. The team like Arizona ain't selling. You know what I mean? So,
no, it's a tough scenario to have play out and work out. I'm very much of the mindset of like, we have these pitchers. I don't want to waste too much longer figuring other things out. I'd rather just try to make some moves that you think are the right moves to make. And if it doesn't work, so be it. you're only going to have these guys healthy and here for so long anyway.
I would agree with that entirely. I'd also say they're not at the height of their powers. You know, they're good. Jared Jones is crazy good right now. I don't think he will be all year. I think he's going to get punched in the mouth at some point, right? And I think Paul Skeens is, like I said, he's got some lessons to learn. I think he'll give up some hard contact until he learns a few of those lessons, I think. And he needs to learn how to get a little deeper into games because he does waste a lot of pitches. That's things he's got to clean up. You'll see that happen over time. These guys won't be as good as they're going to be until year 2, year 3, year 4. That's when you start seeing that sort of stuff really kind of mature. It's very rare that a rookie comes along and leads you to the series or something. So it's not like they have to be ready right now. I guess I would gear deals that I make for that young pitching into multi-year answers. It can't just be a this year answer, and it's got to be an immediate answer when it comes back. It can't be like, here's a guy that we might be able to turn into an answer. It's got to be an answer.
And this all and these stipulations, which by the way aren't wrong, that makes it that much tougher to find the matches to do it.
Yeah,
I just would like to see them start doing it sooner rather than later, even when you get to the off season, because off seasons, as I think the Pirates just found out, there were some attempts and it still didn't work out for them. You know what I mean? Like, you can't control guys not wanting to sign or taking different offers, right? So take some of that out of the equation as much as you can before you get to that scenario. So,
yeah, man, it's going to be an interesting year. I knew that was going to be the case all year, but I also doubted if the fan base had the stomach to watch what they were going to have to watch. I mean, we both picked them to be around 500 team, and there's a reason for that. We thought they'd be around a 500 team. And I know it doesn't seem like it, but what I'm watching right now play is very much so a 500 team. It really is. And when you see like O'Neal Cruz start to do what he's doing, Brian Reynolds start to get back to normal like he has been, Kutch is starting to sting the ball again, Connor Joe's still hitting, that'll be enough with this pitching staff to get the 500 level, is what I'm saying. Well, I don't think it's the national disaster it's being made out to be right now. That's all.
Not right now. I will say they've had a 5-game losing streak, I think, and a 6-game losing streak. You do that early in a season, that's tough. That you cannot do those very often during a season and still come out with a winning record. The problem is they haven't strung together, aside from the beginning of the year, any type of 3, 4, 5-game winning streak either. So I will say biggest things right now you see stability wise is the rotation's got some stability to it. Skeens is up now. I think they figured out 1 through 4. I think they have what they want there. Right? Would you not agree from this story? Yeah, like we're talking.
I'm interested to see how it gets affected when Hayes comes back, because I like what they're doing with Cruz right now, where he's 3 or 4, and I wonder what they'll do when Hayes comes back, because I don't want him to jump right back into that spot.
I think at least it gives them another bat in the lineup where you're not running 4 and 5 guys out there a night that you have no faith in that are going to that can do anything offensively. That's a tough way to make a living, man.
Yeah, what Doug says, worst hitting in baseball, 3rd year into the system. That sounds like national tragedy, like I said. Yeah, Doug, the hitting's not been good. I called for Andy Haynes to be fired. These guys have to persevere past it. I'm sorry. They do. Some of these guys have to perform above that. A hitting coach does not decide whether Brian Reynolds is going to hit the ball tomorrow. Brian Reynolds does. He's been around long enough to not to be the case. Brian Hayes as well. It ain't like he forgot everything John Nunnally taught him, if that's the conspiracy theory you want to believe, that turned him into a national treasure instead of back health, which it was. Yeah.
I think too, like younger guys, as we just talked to Chad, that's where you might see some of the things where there's a bigger effect. But some of these guys that they do have, the Reynolds of the world, the Hayes of the world, the Cruzes of the world, we didn't get a chance to get into this very much, but they just are going to flat out have to perform. They have to perform.
They have to perform.
And not to unrealistic levels. Just because Brian Reynolds has a big contract here for Pittsburgh, he's not Juan Soto. He's not being paid like Juan Soto. He just has to perform to his 25 home run capability, which and doing the things that make Brian Reynolds a very good player.
I mean, bro, if we held a citywide contest for who dislikes Andy Haynes the most, I'd be in the top 10 pretty easily. Like, I don't like him. I don't like his lessons. I don't think he's a good hands-on instructor. I don't. I'll never believe that. But I'll also never believe that these players just sit there and let somebody else steer them into a ditch over and over. They don't. They don't. They go and seek their own help if they don't feel like they're getting it. They work harder on their own with a different coach like Christian Marrero or somebody else. They even work directly with Derek Shelton, I heard today, from Rowdy on that Foul Territory show he was on. So they go and talk to other guys. The careers are theirs. Andy Haynes stinks. I fully believe if we get to the end of the year and that statement you made, Doug, that they're the third worst offense in however long is still true, they'll make a change. The investment is too big, and you can't change all the players.
The bottom line is, I do think you've got veterans. Those guys absolutely have to produce. They have to, at least to their capabilities. The crew, and I think people assume Cruz is now one of those. He hasn't been. But the Reynolds, the Hayeses, the McCutcheons, the Joes, those guys have to be able to do at least their part. They have to.
They do. And I think, don't miss the narrative. Like the hardest thing to do is assemble pitching. It really is. If you get that part done, it's on you to not screw it up. You've got a head start. Like somebody already pushed you halfway up the tree, and you can pretend you climbed if you can just manage to sit. That's all this team needs to do, is not be stupid in the offseason. And they need to use this year to answer questions and win, and yes, try to crip their way towards pretending they're in a wild card race. That's what they need to do this year. I just don't think I just don't think there's a magic bullet out there they're going to trade for.
You're right about the pitching. It's the hardest thing. I don't care if they've bumbled their way into it, with Jones taking the step he did and Skeens coming along and being there for when they're picking number one. But it has happened somehow, some way.
Yep. I think that's enough for this week, brother. Good talk. Lots of stuff to cover. I think
4-game series with the Cubs
is going to be interesting. Yeah. A lot of rematch stuff going on. You get the Jones and Skeens right away, and then we get into what Bailey Falter and who else do we got? Priester. No, not Priester, Keller.
Yeah, and the big thing is too is what I'm really interested to see as the season goes on. Anytime teams get two of the three of the Priester, the Keller, Jones, Skeens in those series, that's when you got to really do your damage, right? In my opinion, those are where you got to do your damage. So I want to see what those look. I want to see what those series start looking like for them when those guys line up for at least two of those starts.
Right. I agree. I think that's going to be fun to kind of watch unfold here a little bit, and also why we haven't dedicated a ton of time to talking about Paul Skeens yet. I think we were talking a little bit via text, and we were like, we should probably wait until he's done something here for a little while. Let's.
Well, yeah, I think this next month's going to be really fun to watch him and see how he looks. Let me just throw, before we go, I want to throw this out there. The Skeens Day was really fun. I don't know that I can remember a time where it was so exciting to watch a guy throw every pitch that he threw. Like, you're just eyes were on it. There was electricity to it, and
Yeah.
I'll give everybody credit that stuck it out the whole time. Like me, like Bucko Banter was there, Ethan was there from Locked On. We braved it all. We stayed the whole time and got to see a lot of different stuff that day. It was a wild game.
Well, I was there with Ethan. I hung out with a lot. Josh from Bridge to Bucktober, and I bailed around 7:30, something like that, because I had shopping to do for Mother's Day yet, and I was supposed to be able to get out of that game and get that done. So I had to get my ass out of there. And then Josh ended up sticking a little bit later than me, and he ended up catching strep throat and PNC Park herpes and all kinds of other AIDS he was dying of over there. So get well, Josh. And yeah, but good time. Really, it was fun. Everybody cheering. Warm up pitches was neat. Like we haven't had a debut like that in a long time. Like I personally can't remember one. So pretty awesome.
No, that was the biggest debut I've ever been in a stadium for, a ballpark for, or sports in general. It was pretty cool.
Well, hey everybody, good stuff, wonderful stuff. Let's get back to winning. Let's start having some of these bats carry the team a little bit. That's what needs to happen.
Go on a little bit of a heat.
Yeah, buddy. Talk to you later.